Hello everybody. In this video we'll continue looking at the 3D Paint tool. If you haven't seen my first video on the 3D Paint tool, you might want to watch that one first. In the previous video we took a look at using the 3D Paint tool to paint a texture, a color texture, on a polygon primitive, a sphere. This time we'll take a look at using the 3D Paint tool to paint on a more complicated mesh, on a character. The first thing I'll do is create a new material. And to do that, I'll go to my Hypershade. And for this example, I'm going to create a Lambert. I will take the Lambert and apply it to my character. And while I'm at it, I'll go ahead and rename the material. Now that we've applied our new material to the character, let's start painting. I'm going to select the mesh, and then I'm going to change my tools from modeling to rendering. Then I will go to texturing, 3D Paint tool, and I'll open up its tool settings by clicking on the square. You'll remember from the previous example that we initially could not paint on our mesh. We get our brush looking like an X. This is because I need to come here to File Textures, choose the attribute I wish to paint, in this case it is color, and then assign Edit Textures. The default setting is 256 by 256, meaning that the texture will be 256 pixels wide and 256 pixels tall. This is a very small texture. To get better resolution, I'm going to change this to 2048 by 2048. I'm also going to change the image format. The reason why I'm going to change it from Maya IFF to another format, in this case JPEG, is so that I can have an image format that I can open in other programs, such as Paint or Photoshop. And now that I've set these settings here, I'm going to go ahead and click on the Assign Edit Textures. Change the color to red. And remember that you can change the size of your brush by changing the radius U value. I can also change the size of my brush by holding the B key and the left mouse button to interactively change the size. So let's see how well it works. Everything looks good so far. How about if I try to paint the face? And look at this, we end up with a problem. It's not working. There's some other areas that will be problematic as well. Let's take a look at what is causing this problem. In previous videos, we looked at UV unwrapping and UV mapping, and we looked at some more simple examples, such as polygon primitives, but also where we had to make some custom UV maps for other objects that we wanted to create. With my mesh selected, I'm going to return to the modeling menu set, and I'm going to go to UV Editor to take a look at this character's UVs. And here they are. This is interesting because if I also create a polygon cube, you'll notice that the UVs align with one another, that the UVs for my character look very similar to the layout of the UVs for this cube. And that is because this character was created from a cube, and then I did a series of extrusions to create the arms, the legs, the neck, and the head. When I did these extrusions, this new geometry that was created did not have functional UVs. I need to map that out myself. One other thing you may have noticed is that when I have my character selected, I'm actually not seeing the texture in here. That's because we're using the 3D Paint tool and we're creating the texture in Maya, even though it still exists as a separate file, an image file elsewhere on our computer. As soon as I save the scene, we'll be able to see the texture in the UV editor. And there it is. So let's start taking a look at how we can UV unwrap this character. One thing I would like to stress is that there isn't a single strategy for doing this well, that you can approach this problem many different ways and you can map it many different ways. What I'm going to show you is a simple solution that I hope will make the process clear for you. I'm going to go ahead and delete this cube, select my character, and because we actually don't need to see the texture right now, I'm going to turn off the texture in the UV editor. The first concept I'd like to get you familiar with is the concept of projections. And with my mesh selected, I'm going to come over here to the UV Toolkit, and we're going to take a look at this section here, Create. And you can see that we have a number of different options: automatic, cylindrical, spherical, and so on. We're going to be looking at camera-based. Watch what happens when I have the mesh selected. Notice how I have the character oriented in my camera, in my perspective camera right now. And then see what happens when I click on the camera-based button. You'll see that it did a projection from my perspective camera. And we can see that projection, and it's from the view of the camera itself. So this is not a good camera to do a projection for UV mapping. Let's take a look at some of the other views. From the top view, I could also do a projection, camera-based, and you'll see that it looks like a view from above or from the side. But for this example, the most logical projection will be from the front. Still have a lot more work to do on these UVs. However, I want to show you an important point. I'm going to turn the texture back on, and we'll make sure that we can see it in our front viewport as well. Okay. Let's return to the 3D Paint tool. And I'm going to change the color. I'll make the color cyan this time. Make my brush a little smaller. And because we're looking at UVs, I'm just going to go ahead and write UV across his chest. And now let's rotate around the character. And you'll notice that the texture is also applied to the other side, however, it's reversed. Again, think of these as projections. We did a projection from the front camera, but this projection projects through the character. In addition, we may end up with some problem areas around here. Because of this projection, these areas will get stretched as well as be reversed. And here is where the real work begins. I'm going to return to the modeling tools and go back to UV Editor. And we'll start working on this character's UVs. Now we picked the front viewport because that made the most logical sense for the mapping of this character. However, there are features on the character that might be better approached from a different projection. The hands and the feet, for example. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my front viewport and select those parts of the character. I will select the feet, and I will select the hands. And I will do another projection on them. This time I'll do a projection from the top view. I think that that projection will be much more effective on both the hands and on the feet. Once again, I'll do camera based. And I'll quickly scale it to be a little more proportional and perhaps move it off to the side just to get it out of the way. You'll remember that the front of our character and the back of the character right now, and the torso area, is using the same texture. That is why UV is backwards on the back. You can in fact see that they are sharing the same UV space in our UV editor. So to fix that, I need to break the front part of the torso off from the back part. And to do that, I am going to select edges and cut. Now you might find with your character that you need to individually select these edges. Because of the way that I modeled it, I can quickly double click on it and it'll select it all the way up here through the hand. Now I actually don't want to cut the edges on the hands nor on the feet, so I will deselect those edges. And now with these edges selected, I'm going to go to Cut and Sew, and I will cut them. Notice that this line became thicker, indicating that the edges have been cut. Remember that these edges being cut are really the UVs. The edges are still attached to one another. Now I'm also going to need to break it in half on the top side here. Once again, I'll select my edges on the top, and I'll deselect the edges I don't want, and I will cut. And now that the front and the back are cut, I can come over here to my UV shell selection, and I can select a shell and move it off. Now the front and the back are no longer sharing the same UV space. The hands and the feet, however, still have the problem of sharing the same UV space. What I mean by that is that the top of the hand shares the same UV space as the bottom of the hand. So we'll take a similar approach as we did with the torso, head, and legs. In fact, what I can do here is turn on symmetry on the x-axis, and I will select these edges here. I'm double-clicking to select all the edges in between the two that I just selected. And you'll notice that because I have symmetry, it also selected them on the other hand as well. I'll come over here to my UV toolkit under cut and sew, and I will cut. And like the other example, if we switch over to UV shell, I can move the top off of the bottom so that they are no longer sharing the same UV space. Okay, we're almost done. Now we'll move on to the feet. Like the hands, the top of the feet is sharing the same UV space as the bottom of the feet. So I will select these edges and I will cut them. And if I switch over to UV shell mode, I can move the tops off of the bottoms of the feet so that they no longer share that space. Another thing that we can take a look at can be found here. By enabling this button, I can see where the distortions are happening on my mesh. As you can see, the button says that UV distortion identify areas of a UV shell that are stretched, colored red, or compressed, colored blue. So the area under the neck right now is being stretched, as well as some of the areas on the side, and some of these interior areas here are being compressed. We can quickly fix this, or at least make it better, by unfolding our UV shells. I'm going to turn off the symmetry now, and I'm going to select all of my UV shells. And then I'm going to come to Unfold, and I'm going to click on the Unfold button. And as you can see, it unfolded my UV shells so that there will be less distortion, so there will be less areas compressed and stretched. While not perfect, this is an improvement. And one other point I would like to make is that actually all our UVs should be contained in this square. So I need to take all my UV shells and make them fit in this area here. One way that will get me at least partly there is selecting the UV shells and coming over here to Arrange and Layout, and clicking on the Layout button. This, however, does not utilize the UV space as effectively as I would like. I'm going to spend a few moments readjusting the UVs to utilize the UV space better. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now that my UVs have been unwrapped and mapped, I can now proceed to paint it effectively using the 3D Paint tool. So with my mesh selected, I'll once again return to the rendering menu set, go to texturing, 3D Paint tool, and open up the tool options or tool settings. To learn more about these tools in depth, you should watch my previous video where I used this tool, the 3D Paint tool, on a sphere, as well as painting a watermelon texture. Okay, so I think the first thing I will do is flood the character. I'm going to pick a color and flood it. And I'll switch over to the color for my brush. And I'm just going to take that same color but lighten it up some. No, you know what? I will make it darker. Now, some of the tool settings here will make painting this texture a little easier. For example, I could go to Stroke and turn on Reflection. And that way, when I paint one side, it will paint the other as well. I'm going to also make my brush larger. Looks like this area got painted accidentally. I'm not sure how I did that, but that should be an easy fix. I'll simply change the brush to the other color and repaint those areas. And I'll now go through the process of painting the rest of the character. And there is my completed character with texture. Let's take a look at the texture in the UV editor. And here you can see how the 2D image texture is mapped to the three-dimensional form. And that's how we can quickly and easily create a texture using Maya's 3D Paint tool. And with a little bit more time and attention to detail, we could make this texture look considerably better. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.